Have you ever wondered if your life is already mapped out? Is every decision you make part of a grand design, or are you free to choose your own path? For centuries, Christians have wrestled with the idea of predestination, the belief that God has already determined who will be saved. This powerful and sometimes controversial teaching has shaped the lives, beliefs, and debates of millions of believers. Today, we're diving deep into why some Christians believe in predestination, what it really means, and how it impacts the journey of faith. Understanding predestination, what does it mean? To start, let's clarify what predestination is. In Christian theology, predestination is the doctrine that God, in His infinite wisdom and sovereignty, has foreordained all that will happen, especially with regard to the salvation of some and not others. For those who hold to this belief, it means that God has chosen, before the foundation of the world, those who will be saved and those who will not. This concept isn't just an abstract idea. It touches on some of the deepest questions we have about God, free will, and the purpose of life. Why would God choose some people and not others? Do we have any say in our salvation? Or is everything already decided for us? The biblical foundations of predestination. Why do some Christians believe in predestination? It all starts with the Bible. Several passages have led believers to this view. For example, in Ephesians chapter 1, the Apostle Paul writes, "He chose us in Him before the creation of the world. In love, He predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ, in accordance with His pleasure and will." Similarly, Romans chapter 8 says, "Those whom He foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son." For those who believe in predestination, these verses are clear evidence that God's plan for salvation was decided in advance. They see predestination not as a cold, impersonal fate, but as an expression of God's love and purpose for His people. Historical roots: Augustine, Calvin, and the Reformers. The idea of predestination isn't new. It has deep roots in Christian history. One of the earliest and most influential proponents was Augustine of Hippo, a theologian in the 4th and 5th centuries. Augustine argued that humanity was so affected by sin that we could not choose God on our own. Therefore, only God's grace could save, and He gives that grace to those He chooses. Centuries later, during the Protestant Reformation, John Calvin took Augustine's ideas even further. Calvin taught that God's will is supreme, and nothing happens outside of His plan, including who is saved. Calvin's teachings became known as Calvinism, and they greatly influenced many Protestant churches, especially the Reformed and Presbyterian traditions. Key beliefs: God's sovereignty and human freedom. At the heart of predestination lies the question of God's sovereignty. Christians who believe in predestination emphasize that God is all-powerful and all-knowing. For them, predestination isn't about limiting human freedom. It's about highlighting God's glory and graciousness. If salvation depends on human effort, they argue, then it's no longer a gift. But if it's God's choice, then it's truly by grace alone. But what about free will? This is where the debate heats up. Some Christians believe that predestination and free will can coexist in a mysterious way. Others hold that God's choice is what ultimately matters. For those who struggle with this tension, the doctrine can be both comforting and challenging. Why some Christians embrace predestination? So, why do some Christians embrace predestination? Here are a few reasons. 1. Assurance of salvation. Believers in predestination often find great comfort in knowing that their salvation doesn't depend on their own strength or ability to stay faithful. If God has chosen them, they can have confidence that nothing can separate them from His love. 2. The glory of God. Predestination is sometimes seen as a way to magnify God's goodness and power. If God is truly sovereign, then He deserves all the credit for saving anyone. This teaching shifts the focus from human achievement to divine grace. 3. Biblical conviction. For many, the Bible's teachings on election, calling, and God's eternal purpose are compelling. They see predestination as faithful to Scripture, even if it's a hard doctrine to accept. 4. Humility before God. Predestination can foster humility. If we are chosen by grace and not by merit, then there is no room for pride or boasting, only gratitude for God's mercy. Common misunderstandings about predestination. Predestination is often misunderstood, even among Christians. Here are some common misconceptions. Predestination means we're just robots. In reality, most Christians who believe in predestination also affirm that humans make real choices and are responsible for them. How God's sovereignty and human responsibility fit together is a mystery that theologians have debated for centuries. Now, predestination means God is unfair. Believers in predestination would say that since all people have sinned and deserve judgment, the real surprise isn't that God saves some, but that He saves anyone at all. They see God's choice as an act of mercy, not injustice. And if everything is predestined, evangelism is pointless. On the contrary, many who believe in predestination are passionate about sharing the gospel. They see evangelism as the means by which God brings His chosen people to faith. Predestination and other Christian views. It's important to note that not all Christians believe in predestination in the same way. Some, like those in the Reformed and Presbyterian traditions, strongly emphasize God's sovereign choice. Others, like Methodists and many Baptists, believe that God desires all people to be saved, and that individuals have a real choice to accept or reject God's grace. The debate often centers on how we interpret the Bible and understand the nature of God. But despite these differences, all Christians agree that salvation is a gift from God, offered through Jesus Christ. Predestination in the heart of the gospel. Ultimately, the doctrine of predestination points us back to the heart of the Christian faith, God's amazing love and grace. Whether you believe God chooses us or we choose Him, the central message is that salvation comes from God and is available to all who put their trust in Jesus. For some, predestination is a source of assurance and hope, a reminder that God's plans are good and that He is in control. For others, it's a challenging doctrine, full of mystery and questions. Wherever you stand, the invitation is the same: to seek God, trust in His goodness, and walk in faith, living with the mystery. At the end of the day, predestination is one of those doctrines that reminds us of the vastness of God and the limits of our understanding. Christians who believe in predestination do so not because they have all the answers, but because they trust in the God who holds all things in His hands. It's a belief that calls for humility, awe, and gratitude, and it invites us to rest in the assurance that whatever our questions, God's love never fails. Thank you, and next step. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into one of Christianity's most intriguing topics. We hope this exploration of predestination has inspired you to dig deeper and think more about your own faith. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Do you agree with the idea of predestination, or do you have a different perspective? Has this doctrine ever challenged or encouraged you in your walk with God? Let's start a conversation. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video thought-provoking or helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Faith and Life for more inspiring Christian content. Together, let's keep growing in faith, hope, and love.